I will say welcome. Um, you all may know me from the kickoff event. Happy day one, y'all. I'm so excited. I am Clark Roman. I am the Director of Learner Engagement here at LaunchCode. I am here as your administrative support. Don't come to me with code questions. Come to me with things like, I can't access things in the textbook. That's my job. Or I'm struggling with, class. I'm struggling to attend class because of X, Y, or Z. That's for me to figure out. I am the administrative support. You have TAs, you have your amazing instructor, Carrie. You have so much support in this. As you've been this big old journey to code and be ready. So you are the start of day one of a huge journey. The amount I see people grow throughout this, and I'm so excited for you all to start that. I think my internet's broken, y'all. I'm gonna pass it to Carrie.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Carrie. Let me get these slides up here. And we will actually be officially, yeah, okay. Are you guys seeing the launch code slide there? Yep, okay. We are going to have a lot to pack in tonight. We've got a couple announcements, and then I'll tell you a little bit about me, and then we'll kind of launch into, so to speak, how to succeed, data and variables, and I'm going to give you a little bit of an introduction to your first graded assignment, and then I'll pass you to your TAs for Studio. And then after that, you'll come back here, and we will just do a recap of the Studio time, which ordinarily would be, technical, like you guys are working on coding something together, and then I'll go over the solution. Tonight's is not a coding assignment, but we're still going to kind of come back and regroup and talk about it. Okay. Announcements. Clark, do you want to take this or do you want me to? Yeah, okay. So your graded assignment deadlines, we just wanted to make sure to point this out. It's in 3 parts. Most of your grade assignments will not be, but this one, we give it to you in chunks so that you can kind of attack it a little bit at a time, since so much of this information is new to so many of you. So the very first part is going to be due a week from tonight, on September 29th. And that's, just a little bit based on some of the things that you're going to be learning tonight. So after tonight, you can kind of work on it anytime you want to. I want to remind you, and I'll remind you again, on graded assignments, you can show and discuss your code only with your TAs and not with each other. This is the one thing that we ask you to, just show us that you know what you're doing by doing it entirely yourself. Part 2 is due on the 3rd of October, and the final one is an enrollment deadline, which essentially means that you have to have it completely done, and you have to have it correct in order to continue on an LC101. And that might sound a little bit harsh, but experience has taught LaunchCode that you guys are more likely to succeed if you really nail it down right here at the beginning, and you understand what the pace of this course is and what it takes to do it. So all you got to do is get that far, and you can continue on, and then there are no drop deadlines after that. Okay, we'll talk more about kind of the pace of the course in a second. So let me introduce you to me. I, many years ago, studied architecture and structural engineering at WashU here in St. Louis. I spent about 17 years in the nonprofit sector doing a wide variety of things, as one does in nonprofit world, wear a lot of hats. And then I decided to make a career switch, like so many of you. And I did LC101 myself. That was in 2019, followed by Liftoff, followed by an apprenticeship. I also was a TA for the Women Plus program, which is similar to LC101 in several ways. And I did that for 2 cohorts, and also stayed with them for their Liftoff. And then earlier this year, I was an instructor for Liftoff, and now I'm an instructor for LC101, which I am super excited about because this is my favorite. I am a front-end engineer. I have worked mostly with React, JavaScript, TypeScript, and Svelte, working on website user interfaces, UIs, and also some web components that are embeddable into other people's websites. I have 2 cats, Marta and Darcy. You will probably see them. I've got one right over here right now begging for attention. off screen. I love puzzles, word games, knitting, gardening, reading, and VR. I am super into Beat Saber right now. I think it's like lots of fun. Okay, so that's enough about me. How to succeed at launch code. This is important to me to cover this because I know what it's like, and I want you guys to have a strong start. So I'm going to talk about how to get the most out of LC101, some of the course tools and resources, what our expectations are, and some general advice and encouragement. Getting the most out of LC1, you got into this course. That alone is an accomplishment because I don't know how it was for this cohort, but when I was a student, they told us at our graduation that there were 1,200 applicants just for our cohort. Okay, so we got, however, I don't know, was it 150 or so that are, enrolled right now that, it's hard competition. So you're here. But you need to understand LC101 is extremely intense, and it has to be because we pack in so much information to try to get you guys as equipped as possible to succeed once you get into the workforce. So you need to understand you're going to be working really, really hard. There's no such thing as coasting through this class. Even those of you who might have some prior experience at this, there's going to be times when you are really, really struggling. So just be aware of that. But, you do LC101, you graduate, then you do liftoff. That gets you even closer. We do some training on, how to do interviews, different types of technical interviews and behavioral interviews, how to write a tech resume. You do a capstone project. And then after that, whatever trajectory you want is up to you. You can go fast, you can go slow, but the next several months are going to be intense. So just so you know that up front. And I evidently didn't put any sort of transitions in here. So you're seeing everything at once. That's okay. Okay, so Clark covered this a little bit in the the kickoff meeting that most of you attended. I watched the video, but you've got Canvas. This is important. I would bookmark all of these things because you're going to be in them constantly. You want to make sure you're paying attention to your syllabus, what's coming down the pike, what's due when, complete your quizzes when you do your reading, log your class attendance, which, by the way, do we have a attendance code for tonight?
We do, but TAs are going to give it out during studio.
That's right. I forgot. Yeah, see, this is what I get for the most recent thing I've done is liftoff. It's done differently. Okay, yes. So you will get that from your TA once you go to studio after the lecture. Awesome. Okay. But you'll log it in Canvas, and then you'll turn in your prep exercises, studios, and graded assignments in Canvas as well. The course book is where you do all your side reading, get your studio instructions, get your graded assignment instructions, and there's lots of other helpful resources. Pay attention to kind of when they point you to here's some extra information. They've got all kinds of extra stuff thrown in that'll help you know a little bit more about what they're talking about that will give you an edge. Replit is the tool you're using for now to write your code. You'll just turn those links in on Canvas for each of the exercises and assignments. Eventually, we'll get you going on GitHub, and we'll tell you all about that when the time comes. No need to flood you with it tonight. Slack, of course, you already know about. Announcements, lecture questions, group channels. You guys can create channels. I think you already have been creating channels, which is awesome. You can, send direct messages to your TAs and your peers. There's a phone app, highly recommend it. There's a desktop, recommend that even more. Because going to it in your browser, it starts to get lost in all of the tabs. And so if you get the desktop app, it's actually much cooler. Okay, Google, I'm kind of going in a circle here, but that's okay. Google, you're going to become a pro at Googling. This is what developers do, by the way. It's not just students. Developers do this on a regular basis. You can have been a developer for 20 years and you are still Googling all the things because there's so much out there to learn. And there's lots of people who are also asking the same questions or coming up against the same problems. So you will be able to find the answers that you're looking for most of the time to help you grasp the concepts that you are looking for. So be resourceful. That's a huge, huge part of being a launch coder. And it's one of the things that companies love about launch coders when they bring launch coders on board, is because we teach you guys to be resourceful, and that's very, very much valued by employers. Okay, last link over here on the bottom left is practice material. This is actually a document that I have that is, I don't know if I have it up here, hold on. Oh, yes, okay. All right, we'll do this. Yes, okay. So let me zoom in a little bit here. This is something that I worked on when I was a TA, actually. I started putting together all these little exercises that are like, and they follows the launch code curriculum. So this is just for unit 1, but all of the stuff that you guys are learning, if you want extra practice or you want to have something explained maybe a little bit differently, and it just hits a little bit different, you can come here and hit up these exercises. And then for your graded assignments, I also have prep exercises specifically for these. And I did like live tutorials with students that have recordings of those live sessions. So you can kind of follow along as I go through and solve the whole thing. I recommend kind of, bookmarking this as well so that you can have access to it, because every once in a while you might find this handy. All right, oops, wrong thing. Let me get back my, there we go. All right, let me move on. All right, so outside of class, I recommend completing all your prep work ahead of lecture. You will have been told, and it's absolutely true, that your prep exercises are optional. But I am telling you from experience, both as a student and also as a TA, the students who succeed are the ones who do the prep exercises. And the reason for that is because they are the building blocks. Like, you have to have a little bit of that knowledge coming in. I'm going to go over things in lecture. Sometimes I will go over it in much, detail, and sometimes I won't, depending on what it is. But you need to come into class already having a good idea of what the heck's going on. And that, because most of your work is done outside this class. So definitely get it done. And then that will prepare you for doing the studio together with your classmates in class, and it'll prepare you for doing your graded assignments, which, as you can see from the little diagram at the bottom, has a very different increase in difficulty. Prep exercises are intended to be easy so that they help you get to that next level, because by the time you get to the graded assignments, you're putting a lot of different topics together from a lot of different lectures all at once, and it's much more challenging. So that prep work is essential. Turn in your work if you want to get your TA's feedback on those exercises, and you can just like submit those links on Canvas and then just hit them up on Slack and say, hey, can you take a look at this for me? You can expect to spend about 15 hours per week outside of class on your prep work and your graded assignments. Make sure you're checking Slack regularly, lots of announcements going out, and lots of people asking probably the same questions you're asking when you get stuck on something. In class, definitely stay engaged in lecture. Tonight, I will say, sadly, I'm going to be talking at you a lot tonight because we have so much to cover. But in future lectures, I would like it to be a lot more interactive. Like, I talk about things, I ask you questions, you guys respond, like, unmute yourself for a second and respond. But we also have this Slack channel, hashtag lecture questions, that you can add yourself to, and then ask questions that probably I will not see while I'm looking at my slides, but Clark can say, hey, somebody's got a question about such and such. And then I will be like, oh, okay, let me answer that. If you throw questions in the Zoom chat, I definitely won't see it. That's not something that's easy to monitor when you're lecturing. So that's why we have that channel. And also because it stays behind and you guys can reference it later. But otherwise, please keep yourself muted so that there aren't any distracting background noises while someone else is speaking. And then I highly encourage you to collaborate during studios. We're actually going to talk about this next week, this concept called pair programming, where you work together with someone else to solve a problem, and you kind of take turns with the actual coding and thinking things through. It's an excellent practice. I've used it a lot at work too, and you can get a lot done because two different sets of eyes, two different sets of experience and knowledge come together, and you get a lot more done. It's a great way to learn. Okay. General advice and encouragement. Figure out what works for you. And I say that because everyone has different stuff going on, right? You guys have different schedules. Some of you have, families with kids running around, and you've got all these other things pulling at you and pulling at your time. So you're going to have to be very strategic about setting your time aside for this. When I was a student, I was working 2 jobs. So that in of itself was crazy. But then my classes, my LC101 met on Mondays and Wednesdays. So that meant that if I wanted to get the prep work done for Wednesday night's class, I might not be able to do it on Tuesday night between classes. So I usually planned ahead and did both classes over the weekend so that I would be prepared for both, because Tuesday nights, it just, and sometimes, you have to walk away and come back because you get stuck, right? So you need to be able to strategize about how much time you think you're going to need, not just to do it, but to think about it, to figure it out, to do the research. Maximizing your home learning environment. I actually have a whole presentation about this. I mean, it's like 9 minutes, but I did a presentation for students a couple times. And that's in that document that I linked. So if you guys want to check that out, there's a lot of things you can do to improve. I mean, with COVID, I think just about everybody's probably already figured this out. But if this is new for you, trying to figure out how to do this work at home and cut out the distractions and, get your space all set up, then take a look at that. And then, definitely figure out if, maybe your thing is YouTube videos, maybe your thing is going and reading documentation on JavaScript. Maybe it's, just doing lots of practice problems at like HackerRank or something. Whatever it is, whatever helps you learn, figure that out and make use of those resources. Be kind to yourself, because it's going to get hard. You're going to get frustrated. And there's this thing called imposter syndrome that you'll hear thrown around. Everybody is learning, everybody struggles, and it's going to be hard, and that's going to be uncomfortable. And you have to learn to live with that. You're going to have to sit with that discomfort because it just is what it is. It's a learning curve. Learning curves are painful. So the sooner you come to terms with that, the easier this will be. I say easier. Yeah, the easier it is to work through how hard it is, I guess is what I'm saying. And everything you're feeling is normal, it's valid, okay? But you're gonna keep your end goals in mind. You're gonna talk about that tonight during studio, about these goals that you're gonna set for yourself. And most of all, enjoy the process, because y'all are gonna be learning so much cool stuff. It's awesome. So, have fun. Have an extended support system. Talking to friends and family, is important because you have real relationships that you are trying to maintain while you're doing this very, very difficult thing that is disrupting your life right now. And so with all seriousness, I say, make sure that you're protecting your relationships by talking to people, being honest about what you need from them, being honest, asking them to be honest with you about what they need from you to work this out so that you can get through this. And then be there for each other. I have said this before, and I think I realized this on like day one as a student. LaunchCode's strength is not its curriculum. It's not even its apprenticeship program and its relationship with companies. That's all awesome, and it's why we're here. But the strength is in community. The community that you build with your peers, with your TAs, with your wonderful course engagement manager. Is that right, Clark? Although that's not Clark's title anymore. But yes, this is all really, really important because you are all in this together. You're going to lift each other up, build each other up, learn from each other, help each other out. No one is alone. So if you start feeling a little bit siloed, reach out. Just talk to your TA, talk to your peers. I highly recommend forming study groups with your peers. That is essential. And I have made some lifelong friends from my time as a student. I really have. And so, you're going to get to know some folks here, and that's a really, really important piece of getting through this. So overall, decide today that you're going to commit yourself to making time for this course, and you will succeed. It absolutely makes all the difference in the world to have that mindset up front, because it will get hard, and it is very time consuming, but you're going to do it. You're going to do awesome. Okay, I'm going to take a drink of water, and then I'm going to keep talking. Okay, so data and variables. This is the topic of the day, and you guys hopefully did your prep work for chapter 4 to learn all about this, but I'm going to go through everything and just talk it through, give you some examples. I'm not going to do any live coding tonight, but I will do that in the future. For now, I've just got like some screenshots, examples of code that will be in the slides. We're going to talk about data types. We're going to talk about what a variable is, what a constant is, the importance of how you name your variables, what expressions are and how they're evaluated, what kind of operators there are for syntax with JavaScript, and then how to get user input, which is going to be an important part of your graded assignment. Okay, so data types. The first one is a string, And this can be words, letters, digits, special characters. It has to be in either single or double quotes. And you can have quotes within quotes as long as they're not the same kind. So a good example of this is on the right there, line 9, long paragraph. Helen Keller once said, right? So you'll notice that if, like, let's say I wanted to display this on a website for somebody to read, I want her quote to actually be in double quotes, right? Good English. So the quote that designates it as a string for JavaScript then has to be in single quotes in order for that to work. So that's a good example of how you might have quotes inside quotes. And then you can also have an empty string, which is just quotes with nothing in it. And that is what it's called, an empty string, but it's still a valid string. It's a valid string data type. Numbers in JavaScript, there is no distinction between the different number types like there are in other languages. So it can be an integer like 20. It can be a float, also called a floating point, which basically means it just has a decimal, with it, or a double, which is like a longer one. The example yards per millimeter, which is a really, really silly conversion that I, came up with just for this example, because it has a ton of decimal places. But yeah, that would be a double. In JavaScript, these are all the same type. They're all just numbers. Make sure you don't use quotes, because otherwise that converts it to a string. And you don't want to have commas in your long numbers. So you'll notice this 93 million miles to the sun has no commas. And that is because this is the only way the JavaScript is going to know that that's what you mean. Okay, the variable. So a variable stores information. It can store many different data types or even collections of data. You're going to learn about those in future classes. The word variable just means changeable, right? So the idea here is that you can have a variable and give it a value, but you can also give it a different value later on. You always declare a variable with the keyword let. You might see var used in older code bases or older resources online. That's just the old way of doing things. JavaScript hasn't done it that way in years. Nowhere that I have worked have I seen anybody still using var. Everybody uses let. This is the way it's done. So that's what we're teaching you. You assign values using a single equal sign. And I want to talk about this whole terminology of declaring versus initializing, because you're going to hear these words thrown around. And when I was a student, I was like, what's the difference? I don't understand. Declaring means that you just say, I want this variable to exist, and here's the name. And so like in the example here, line 28, it says, let my favorite flower, but I'm not giving it a value. So then I can initialize it separately later and say, I want to actually assign a value to be stored in this variable name. So I set my favorite flower equals tulip, and I put quotes around it. So JavaScript says, oh, hey, that's a string. So that's how that's done. You don't actually have to say it's a string. It just infers it because of the quotes. Other languages, you have to actually type your variables, but not in JavaScript. So you can also declare and initialize all at once. This is what you'll do most of the time, likely. You create it, you store the value, and the type is inferred all at once. So on line 36, you see an example here, let my favorite tree equal redbud. And then on line 37, number of redbuds equals 2, and that's a number. Same thing, it infers the type because there's either quotes or there's not, and it's a digit. So yeah, it's a number that it can calculate with. So those are the basics of variables. Now, there's also a constant. And this is kind of the opposite of the idea of a variable, because you don't want it to change. So you're going to store a value in the name, but it's protected and it can't be changed. And you use the keyword const instead of let for constants. Sometimes you'll see all caps being used for constants. So I've got examples of both of these, right? Max accounts, that's your typical camel case that you use for JavaScript, where it starts off with a lowercase, but then every new word after that has an uppercase for the first letter. That's camel case. And I set that equal to 3. I could try to change that later and say, max accounts equals 4. And then if I go and I console log max accounts, it's still going to say 3, because there's no such thing as reassigning a new value. And base URL, you'll see this actually used a lot when you're doing web development, things like this, where they have a constant that they want to declare up front that can't be changed, so that, and that sometimes that's for security reasons. So these are good examples. It's a very useful way to make sure that something can never be altered. Okay. The importance of good variable naming. You always want to be descriptive, and readability is more important than length. So while it might seem like a good idea to save room in your code or make things look cleaner by just saying let X equal or let T equal, most of the time that is actually a bad practice, because you need to know what it represents. If someone else comes in and looks at your code, they need to know what the heck's going on. Good names will help them do that. They can look at it, they can read it and go, okay, I know exactly what's going on here. So you want to avoid naming things in a way that one variable is confused for another, and make sure that it's obvious that, not only what it is, but what data type it is. So, and then I mentioned earlier using camel case for JavaScript. So here's some examples. You could say let book equals Death on the Nile, but a better one would be let book title, or you could even just say title if you don't have any CDs or DVDs lying around, and you're only talking about books, then just title would do. But it's specific, right? And same thing, type equals mystery, kind equals hardcover. Those are going to get real confusing real fast. So you could say, genre or format. Those are more specific words. And then, if you're have a number of things, books equals 10. There again, books could just be a list of books, right? So say number of books or something like that, amount of books, book amount. I don't know. Just do something that makes it clear this is a number and it's, relates specifically to books. Okay. Evaluating expressions. So this idea of an expression is that you can combine together values, variables, operators, and more. You'll learn about the more later. And it can be really simple, or it can be complex with a ton of different operations going on. But the point is that you string it all together, and the JavaScript can compute it and then return a value to you. And most of the time when you do this, you're going to be storing it in a variable name. So you'll see this example, down here where I've got a number of different expressions in a row. And you can do all of these things, one after the other behind the scenes without having it in the, console. You don't have anything logged out yet. So I say, okay, I've got a const. This is never going to change. The river flow rate is 1.3 meters per second. But I've got this crew over here who's rowing, and they're rowing at 3.6 meters per second. So I can calculate the total speed of them getting downstream by adding those two together, river flow rate plus rowing speed. That's an expression. Actually, all of those are expressions. And so then you go and you console log out that last variable, speed rowing downstream, and you should see 4.9, the sum of the two, because it was calculated. That's a very simple example. But this is what when we say expressions, this is what we mean, river flow rate plus rowing speed. Okay, let's talk about the different operators. Some of them are really straightforward, like plus, minus, times, and divided by. There's also exponentiation. You might see sometimes where people use the little up caret when they're typing to say 3 squared, but that is not good syntax for JavaScript. You have to use a double asterisk. So that double asterisk, you can replace that in your head with to the power of, and then you've got something that you can work with. So if you have to the power of 2, of course, it's squared. If it's to the power of 3, it's cubed. So here's some examples. 3 squared is 3 asterisk 2. Man, say that 3 times fast. 5 cubed is 5 asterisk 3. And then 2 to the power of 5. And in all of those cases, those calculate out to be those final numbers, 9, 125, and 32. Okay, increment and decrement. You will, in the next couple of classes, this will become apparent exactly what it is that these are going to be useful for. But just so you understand how they work now, we'll talk about it. If you actually just do x plus plus after you've, let's say, x is 5, x plus plus, if you console log that out while you're doing it, it's going to give you the original value. But then if you go and you console log x after that, it's going to say, oh yeah, we increased that, and it'll tell you that the new value is 6. On the other hand, if you want to do it all at once and be able to increase the value by 1, but also just return that value at the same time, you can put the double pluses in front. Same thing with decrement. Y minus minus, if it's 19, it'll give you 19, but then you can check the value of y and it's now 18. But you can change it all at once and then put out the new value all at once with the minus minus in front. Yeah, so then you get 17. And then modulo. So this one might be a little bit of mind bender at first. It's actually not that hard and you'll get used to it. The way to talk about it is mod or modulo. Most of the time people just say mod. So I've used these examples here. Let 6 mod 4. And it basically just says, if you were to divide these, divide 6 by 4, what would be the remainder? That's what the modulo gives you, okay? So 6 mod 4 gives you 2. And 3 mod 2 gives you 1. And then this little graphic here is the third example. 34 mod 6 gives you 4, because you end up with 5 perfect groups of 6 being the modulus. That's the thing that you're grouping up by. And then you have 4 left over. So 34 mod 6 is 4 because that's the remainder. Does that make sense? You can think about this more later. It's okay. Okay, operators, part 3. We have string plus sign. And you might say, how can you have the same sign, but it be for strings instead of for numbers? Well, it infers that data type, right? So if you have a couple of strings and you add them together, it's going to treat them like strings. And actually, technically, JavaScript is tricky because you can add a number to a string and it'll convert the entire thing to a string. There are no longer any numbers involved. But typically speaking, most of the time, you're going to be saying number plus number or string plus string, and it knows what to do. So this is called concatenation when you put 2 strings together. And so I've been watching Doctor Who reruns. So this was my immediate example. Doctor plus space plus who ends up printing to Doctor Who. Wibbly plus hyphen plus wobbly is wibbly wobbly. And if you guys know the Blink episode, you know what I'm talking about. But you can also do this with variables, right? So first name Donna, last name Noble. And then I say, console log first name plus space plus last name. And that gives me nice, clean Donna Noble. These kinds of string operations are done all the time for, really, really practical purposes on websites, right? To produce custom strings of information using specific information. You're going to be doing this for your graded assignment. It's going to be part of what you do for the very first part of the assignment. Okay, and I accidentally put the same information on this slide, it looks like. So you get to see about the modulo all over again. I didn't mean to do that. Sorry, guys. All right, getting user input. This is the last topic of chapter 4. You are going to learn for now. I mean, eventually, you're going to be actually building web pages and putting forms on them where you can get people to, it's stuff you do every day when you're on the web, right? And you'll learn how to do that. But for now, what you're going to do is learn how to take user input in the console and use that to then turn around and do other things with it. This readline sync library is something that we would call a dependency. You'll learn about those later on in greater detail. But for now, all you need to know is that you just use this keyword require, and it basically just says, I want to go grab this library and I want to use its functionality for my program. And if you assign that to this const input, it means you can't accidentally overwrite input. You're always going to be able to use this library. And from then on, you're just going to use input to ask the question. Question is one of the methods that works with this library. And it gives you a nice clean way to just immediately be able to get user input. So that input.question prints the question to the console that you put between the parentheses there. And you have to make sure it's a string, so it's in quotes. And so in this example, we're storing it in the response in a variable, because input.question doesn't just print something to the console. If all you were going to do is print something to console, you use console log for that, right? Input.question also returns a value. So this is useful to you if you store it in a variable. So on this example, like on line 120 there, I've got, let name equals, and then I say input.question, what is your name? In the console that says, what is your name? So then the user goes and they type in, Carrie, and they hit enter. And so then I have this console log that makes use of that information. I've taken that variable name and put it into this string and concatenated it together with these other pieces. And then what the user sees in the console is, hello, Carrie. And if I had put in Bob, it would say, hello, Bob, because it's a variable. It'll take anything that the user puts in and put it in that place. And then I could do it again. I could say, let location equals input.question, where are you right now? And it'll ask, and let's say I enter St. Louis. And then your program spits out St. Louis. What a great place to be. Okay, so this is how this works. It's an exchange of information, but you have to remember that it's not just about printing the question, it's also about receiving that value back once they enter it and storing it in a variable, and then you can use that variable. This is critical for your graded assignment. So I want to make sure you understand this. Okay, before I move on to the intro to the graded assignment, do we have any questions about anything that I have talked about? And I should probably grab my Slack here and see. Oh, and people are answering questions, great. Yes, JavaScript, the question was, when defining a variable in camel case, is it case sensitive if you're referencing it later? And the answer is yes, like absolutely, it's case sensitive. So you always want to make sure that it's exactly how you defined the variable.
Well, Carrie reads the next question. I'm just going to give you all a warning that we are probably going to turn off Zoom chat, because in my history, folks don't like Zoom chat. It gets a little overwhelming. So we'll have a separate Slack channel just for chat, lecture chat, and lecture questions. Y'all should already be in the lecture questions Slack channel. I made you automatically be added to that because I have that power. Because it's really hard as an instructor, someone who's done it, it's really hard to monitor Zoom chat, and the Slack is much easier. So just so you know, it also saves it, at least temporarily. So just so you know, throw your questions in. Some people will answer them. TAs might answer them. Carrie might get to them. All the above. So lecture questions is the channel for questions. Don't get too attached to the Zoom chat right now.
Right. Okay, so I'm going to take these questions that I'm seeing in the lecture questions channel a little bit out of order because I'm already on the user input thing here. So to Michael's question, it is good practice to do that if you are going to be getting user input. If you're not going to be getting a user input, there's no point in having it. But always, generally speaking, any sort of dependencies like extra libraries you're adding in, you always put them at the very, very top of your program. That's common. So you only have to do it once, and then after that, you just use that input variable as many times as you need to. Why for the location are there no quotes for the user input? James, can you?
Line 125.
Oh, because it's a variable.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah, so this is but this is good that you brought this up because this is important. Yeah, this is a good example of how you create an expression that combines variables with actual values. So the string that's tacked on there with the question mark and what a great place to be, that's a direct value that's hard coded. That's what we call it. It's hard coded because you put it in there once and you can't go and change it with a variable name. But location captured that input from the user, and now I'm just using it again to make sure it gets spit back out to the console.
Gotcha. Okay, I see. It's the same thing with name. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So and you're going to be doing a lot of this in your in your exercises in your graded assignment. Okay, so, right, and I think, yeah, so Adam, if you add a string to an integer, JavaScript automatically just converts the entire thing to a string, and it just tacks that. It basically converts the integer to a string and then concatenates them as if they were both strings to begin with. So it doesn't create an error. And yes, everything is case specific. All right, I'm going to get back to that exponentiation question again, although it looks like you guys have been talking about it here. There you go. Okay. That looks like that one's okay. So if you guys are following these questions, there's a thread for that. Okay. I noticed, so Laura says, I noticed in one slide you'd use a space in quotes, and in the last slide you have a space after the hello. So basically it's just about how you want to construct it. You guys are going to be learning other ways to construct strings. The coolest way to do it, and the easiest way, I think, from a readability standpoint, is to use string interpolation with template literals. And that was a lot of words, and we'll talk about it later in another class. But it makes it easier to kind of say, oh, to make sure you don't forget to put those spaces in. Because if I had left that space out after hello, comma, then if you look at the comment to the side there, it just says, hello, comma, space carry, then it would just say hello, comma, carry. So it's all about like what you want it to be once it gets to the console. So you just have to kind of be mindful of where to put those spaces in. All right, say a variable was previous an int and you concatenated it and now it becomes a string. Would for all code. Oh, okay. That's an excellent question. Okay, so if you have a variable that has been assigned a value, you would actually have to assign something new to it for the value above that variable to change, especially for strings, because strings are, and you're gonna learn about this later too. Strings are what we call immutable. So you'd have to completely, essentially overwrite the value with something else. If you just use a variable to like print something or to make it part of a new variable, it doesn't change the value, the original value of it. You can go, like I could actually, that in this example that you're talking about, you could have a number, a variable that's assigned a number like, x equals 3, and then I could concatenate that and say, my number is plus, and then I could say X, and it would create the string, my number is 3, but it doesn't change the fact that the variable X is still a number, and it still holds that value as a number data type. Does that make sense? And you can assign multiple values to a variable, it just is going to change each time. Once you update it to a new value, that's the value that it has from that point forward, unless you change it again. And you will do that. I would recommend getting into Replit and playing around with this, right? Let's see, look at the time here. I'm going to pull up a Replit in a second. I'm going to give you an example of some of this stuff. Questions are coming fast, guys. Okay. Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah. So arrays, yes, you can have like a list of things, and that would be an array. And you'll learn about those in a couple classes, I think in a week. Yes, the PowerPoint will be available to you. PEMDAS, yeah. I didn't bring that up, but that is in your course book. Yeah, good. Yeah, and that's good. Like something that you should always do if you're not sure about how something works is jump into a Replit and just try it out, because it's a great way to learn. Actually, let me just say this to you guys now, because this is important, and you're going to need to think this about every 3 seconds when you're working on your exercises and your assignments. You learn from your mistakes. Making mistakes is instructive. It is how you learn. So a huge part of learning to code is breaking it and making mistakes and screwing up and doing it the wrong way 3 times in order to figure out what the right way is. I mean, when I'm creating like some sort of complicated algorithm for something, I fully expect that I'm going to be figuring out how to do it by breaking it several times in order to get it right. And that'll make more sense to you once you get to writing those things. But yes, it's totally okay to absolutely get in and just play around with it. Yeah, Mitchell, I did have an example of that. Actually, I can go back and find that slide. Dun, 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 dun. Is that too far? Nope, I think it was all a bit. Sorry, guys. Okay, yes. Here's an example of that long paragraph, right? This was the Helen Keller quote. This is an example of where you want it to display with double quotes. So you actually use single quotes to construct the string for JavaScript. And now we're talking about the historical PEMDAS. That's all good. Okay, theoretical limit to the length you can make a string. That's an excellent question. There used to be. These days, yeah. If it's out there, it would be really, I really honestly don't know. That's a good question. Somebody should Google that. All right. I assign one of you to Google that and then put the answer in there for Josh. Okay. Let's see. Is there anything else that I've missed here? All right. Does anybody else have any other questions? So if not, I will move on and we'll talk a little bit about this graded assignment. Okay. What template should you use for JavaScript and Replit? Oh, just the node. Just create a, yeah. And then a lot of times when you guys are doing stuff straight from the reading, or if you're doing your exercises and assignments and stuff, launch code gives you starter code. So you can just go and fork it from the starter code too. But if you're just playing around, yeah, just create one with node. All right, not a number. Saranya has a question about not a number. So with the number data type, you can actually use this is in chapter 4. I didn't bring it up, but you can use the type of keyword to find out what type a piece of data is, right? And not a number basically means exactly what you think it does. It's useful for things like you're going to have an assignment in several weeks where you're going to be like having a form on a web page and you're going to have to like validate the information. And not a number is a really useful way to tell if the person put in a string or a number into the form, and maybe that, maybe it was supposed to be a number and they put in a string, and you want to say, hey, you can't do that. Like, you need to actually put the right kind of value in this form field. You can test with type of to see if something is a number or not. And then if it's not, hey, can you give us a number, please? Right. So yeah, it's just, you might get that back sometimes as a return value if something is expected to be a number and it's not. Okay, we've got a thread here on readline sync. Yes. That's the user input that I was talking about at the end. It lets you, that input dot question allows you to have a prompt. But it's a library. Yeah. It's kind of the idea. Okay, so let's say you want to bake a birthday cake, and you could go to the trouble of making the icing from scratch with butter and 10x sugar and vanilla, which is the way my grandmother always did it, and it's amazing. Or you could buy a tub of pre-made icing from the store and just slap that on the cake, right? So kind of like that. It's like you have a program and you're writing it, and someone else has already made something that you don't need to code from scratch because they've got it all nicely packaged up for you, so you can just use it as it is. That's what Readline Sync does for you. It's what a lot of these packages, these libraries do for you. Somebody else has gone to the trouble to write a bunch of complicated things so that you can just plug it in and use it. That's the idea. Okay, 2 to the power of 53 minus 1 is the limit. Wow. Can I retouch on constant again? Yeah, Brad's got a good answer here. Okay, so yeah, and Sean, okay. Yeah, it's just something that can never be changed. You can't assign a new value to it like you can with a variable. 1 million characters in a string, wow. Yeah, okay. I'm going to move on to the intro to graded assignment, and then introduce your studio, and then you guys are going to go. Oh, and we're going to let your mentors introduce themselves too. So let's move on. And if I'll come back and scan that questions channel again, and if there's anything still unanswered, I'll get in there and try to answer it. Okay, graded assignment 1, candidate testing, which you know, if you go let's see, I think I can go to it here. Tab. Oh, that's not it. That's definitely not it. I've cut the wrong thing. Oh, here we go. Okay. Oh, I knew it was here somewhere. Okay, so assignment number 1, candidate testing. This is from your course book. On the main contents page, if you go down below chapters, there's actually helpful links to your studios and helpful links directly to the assignments. So we'll go to assignment number 1, candidate testing. The idea here, this is what you're going for. This is what should be in the console when your program runs. And it's going to be interactive, and you're basically you're going to play the role of the user. So you're going to write this program to ask the candidate for their name, and then ask them a question and get the answer from them, and then tell them what the correct answer was. And then at the very end, you'll have this little, grade with the final report and tell them whether they passed or they failed. But you're not going to be doing this all at once. This is in 3 parts. So let's talk about part 1. Part 1 is just minimum viable quiz, which is kind of a play on words, because in the coding world, in the IT world, there's something called a minimum viable product, which is basically means it's the most basic thing that you could possibly have that works, but it's not complicated and doesn't have bells and whistles. That's what you're going to do. You're going to basically just pick one of the questions of the 5 questions that are available and ask them for their name, ask them the question, store their answer, and then give them some sort of feedback to say, you got it right or you got it wrong. That's all you have to do for part 1. And then part 2 is going to be using things you have not learned yet, called loops and conditionals and arrays, to go through and do this 5 times to get their answers for all 5 questions. And then the very last part will be calculating that grade and then making sure that this entire thing is output exactly like this. So you're going to have, a couple of weeks here to work on this and get it bit by bit. Let me get back to my slideshow. All right, so reminders, don't share code with classmates, and the entire thing has to be done by October 10th and correct for you to stay enrolled in the class. But I covered that before. But yeah, so this breakdown here, part of this, I just wanted you to make sure that you understand that you don't have to know all of the things to do part 1, and you don't even have to know all of the things to do part 2 necessarily, because part 3 is going to bring it all together. And we'll be, teaching you this stuff class by class, and it's all going to make sense, I promise. It probably looks scary right now if you've never done this before, but it will make sense, I promise. Does anybody have any questions about the graded assignment? that, I mean, you can read the instructions. Not like stuff that's in them. Let's see, okay. Oh, yeah, Canvas has probably not been updated yet. Clark, Josh was saying that Canvas still says that part 1 is due on Monday.
That's on me. It is due on
Next Thursday.
class tonight. It's due 9/29. I realized that I did a little switcheroo with the studio you're doing tonight, and I really wanted you to have the practice of the studio tonight, the Monday studio before I made it due. So I decided, it was a little more fair to y'all, and I figured you'd be a little less frustrated if we made it due on Thursday after doing some thinking last night. So it is due 9/29. And the reason, I'll elaborate kind of on what Carrie said. There's a reason we break this up. So we break this up because it's hard to build a program. It is like it's kind of tough to build your first program. So we're kind of holding your hand a little bit by breaking it up, right? Part 1, minimum viable product. That is the minimum we need to prove that you know a little bit. Then part 2 adds a little bit more, and part 3 adds even more. And as you grow, you'll get less of this kind of hand holding because you won't need it as much. But right now, we want you to, take it slow. And we also want you to start doing it early, because the worst thing you can do for yourself is start doing this on October 9th and then message me panicked at midnight on October 9th, being like, I'm not going to finish this. We really want you to start this early. That way you can get help. That way you can identify what you don't know. Matt says, are you able to get the questions wrong, or will you fail out of the class after the first time you submit? So this is why you should work on this early and submit early. We want this completed and passing by October 10th. That means finish it on October 8th, turn it in. If your TA will look at it, they'll take a look, they'll be like, meh, you messed up this part. And they'll have time to turn it around, get it back to you. You only need the content from classes 1, 2, and 3. Correct me if I'm wrong, Carrie. From 1, 2, and 3 to complete this assignment. Maybe a tiny bit of class 4. It's due on class 6. So you don't need class 6 this assignment. You only need the content from the first, which means that you get some time to practice it, to mess with it, to make some mistakes, to talk to your TA, to turn it in completely wrong and pass back. So that's something that you should be able to basically get it passing by 10. If you have concerns about that date, please let me know.
Yeah, it's actually the first 4 classes, because class 4 is where we talk about loops, and you will definitely need that to do some of it. In fact, we might have to move. We'll talk about it. We might have to move the deadline on one of these to give you guys time on this. But yeah, you're gonna have time to work on this in bits and pieces, and you'll get there. So if it seems overwhelming now, it's okay. You guys are going to be amazed. I experienced this over and over again as a student, and I still experience it as I continue learning as a developer, but you're going to look back and go, oh my gosh, I can't believe how much I learned in the last 2 weeks or the last month or whatever. Like, you're going to be floored at how much information you have grabbed a hold of and mastered, or come close. So, be encouraged. Just keep working on everything, and you're going to get there. Okay. Clark, do we want to do TA introductions before I enter the studio or after?
Let's do TA introductions before, and then I will share a link, because I want to, and this is new to you, Carrie. I'm sorry I didn't give you a heads up. I'll share a new program we're trying out this quarter. But for now, let's go ahead and get started with some TA introductions. The reason you have, for TAs, you have your assigned 2 TAs, right? They are the people that are going to be leading your small group. They're great, they're awesome, but they are not the only ones. There are 19 right now, about to be 21 after next week, TAs that are all experts at coding, that are here to help you. So for instance, that is 21 options for different TAs that might work in your schedule. That is 21 different teaching styles that might work with your brain. Your TA should be the primary point of contact for things like grading, for things like absences, things like that. That's kind of who your TAs are there for. And your TAs may be the people you're most comfortable with. They'll be there for your small group. But also, I got distracted by Carrie's cat. But also, we have other TAs. So for instance, if Terrence's teaching style really resonates with you, go to Terrence's office hours. So that's why we're introducing everyone to you. So you can kind of get a feel that you are allowed to go to anyone's office hours. And I will post a link this weekend with all office hours for everyone. So you can take a look at all the office hours, figure out what works with your schedule, and not be afraid to pop into someone who you've never seen their face of. So that aside, I would love for each of the TAs. I think I gave you all an order in our Slack channel. I would love, I'm doing it alphabetically, and I had to think about who was first in the alphabet. So we're going to start off with Dakota. Are you here tonight? I know you were going to be late.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Cool. My name is Dakota Crossan. I went to the Launch Code program a year and a half ago. This will be my second cohort being a TA, and I am a software staff level software engineer with Vizian.
Awesome. Next up is gonna be Fred.
Hi, I'm Fred. I've graduated back in 2019. I am a senior software engineer with Centene.
Next up is Jake Medley.
Hello, I'm Jake. I'm a junior software Java developer for NISC based in St. Louis. I just graduated from Launch Code in the last cohort, so I'm excited to teach you all and give back.
Next up, we have Jay Sick. You have a couple TAs that are absent tonight. You'll see their names. They're also lovely people, I promise, even if they're not introducing themselves right now. So next, we'll pass it on to Kelly.
Hi, I'm Kelly. I was in the Women Plus cohort back in 2020, whenever it was Coder Girl with Carrie. I am a software developer for Chrysler, Stellantis, FCA, whatever you want to call it.
I just lost my tab because of course I did. Next up, we have Marcus, who I think may be out tonight. Yep, Marcus Chinnery, he is awesome. He is great. Not sure, I think he's just out tonight. So we're gonna, again, great human. Feel free to go to his office hours. Toss it over to Matthew.
Hey everybody, I'm Matthew Jameson. Currently going through liftoff. Happy to be here and available if anybody needs help.
Pass it over to Safna.
Hi everyone, I'm Safna. I did my LC101 on 2019. This is my 4th cohort. Yep.
Safna has seen everything. A lot of these folks have done this a lot. So people that have seen everything have so much experience. I'm going to pass it down to Sammy.
Hi everyone, I'm Sammy and I did Launch Code. I'm working as Android developer for a company called VMLYNR. Also wanted to give back. I love this community. Good luck everyone. And if you need any help, you guys can reach out to me.
Next we have Santoshni.
Hi all, I'm Santoshni, graduated from LC101 2020 cohort. Currently working as a AWS cloud developer in Enterprise Holdings. Thank you, Launch Code. Thank you, Clark, for giving me this opportunity to work as a TA again. Nice to see you all on this beautiful evening.
I will pass it over to Selena.
Hey everyone, my name's Selena, pronouns she, her. I went through the LC101 program in 2020, and then I went through Liftoff and then through the apprenticeship program. Currently a software developer with Branagh Group. Yeah, but oh, and I've TA'd a couple of times, so I think this is my third cohort TAing. For this cohort, I'm going to be a floating TA. I think Clark mentioned it. So I won't be assigned to a specific group, but I'll have open office hours, so anyone can drop into that or ask me questions.
Awesome. Pass it on to Sean.
Hey everybody, I'm Sean. Kind of quiet and shy, reserved, all those fun things. I went through Launch Code's Code Camp, which is this class on speed. So anytime you guys are stressing out about deadlines and all that, I went through this class. I was moving, about 3 times faster. It's a lot of fun. So when you guys are stressing out, you definitely have a friend over here to talk to. I've been there, done that. Works as a lead developer in the legal tech space, and I'm always here if you need help.
Pass it over to Terrence.
Hey, how you doing, everyone? Terrence Whedon. I am a full stack developer. I went through Launch Code. Launch Code actually got me my first job in 2016. I've been programming for over 6 years. I worked wherever they needed me. I learned it. I learned if you can learn, if the job gives you an opportunity to learn something, my advice is learn it. I've learned infrastructure. I work in the cloud. Like I said, I work React on the front end now, and also Java on the back end. But because of that cloud experience, I helped build the CI/CD pipeline. These are things that your career will lead you to. Also, too, I create the content for all of you that's in the JS chapter review. I go over the literature line by line because I deal with ADHD. So I teach it from that perspective. I take my time and go through the curriculum. And also too, I'm an early bird. So I get up at 3 o'clock every morning. So my office hours would be at 6 in the morning on Saturday. We call it the bright and squirrelies. So for those that are early birds, I'm up at 6. I'll be teaching from 6 to 8 in the morning on Saturday, so that we can do our review for the whole week, and then help you guys get through these assignments.
Could never be me, but I'm so happy for Terrence, and you'll be surprised at the amount of people that show up. There's always a good crew. Again, could never be me. Pass it over to Tim Heron.
Hi guys, I'm Tim Heron. I graduated from Launch Code last year in November. This is my first cohort TA, so I'm excited. I am a software engineer with a company called EagleView. They're a remote company, but yeah, that's all.
Pass it to Wesley.
Hey, how's it going, you guys? I'm Wesley Park. I came to Launch Code with a little bit of a background in computer science with like a minor. So I didn't actually go through the course myself. I just built a project for Launch Code and got a job through Liftoff. Right now I'm working as a software developer for a company called SuperTech. And I do most of my programming in C# and the .NET framework. I also do a lot of work with DevOps if you're interested in that. And yeah, I'm just here because I want to give back to Launch Code because it helped me a lot, and it's helped a lot of people that I care about. So
pass it down to Will.
Hi, my name is Will Morris. Not that Will Morris, but I just graduated from the previous cohort, and I am just wrapping up Liftoff here. So I'm pretty close to where you guys are now. It's funny to think about how far I've come personally, but this is my first run around as a TA, and I'm really excited to give back to Launch Code and continue in this community.
Awesome. pass it on to Zach Wilson.
Hey everybody, my name's Zach. I went through the 2020-2021 cohort, the one and only in Northwest Arkansas. So I live here in Fayetteville, right by the university. I work for a consulting company called Firma. So I said in chat earlier, it's like drinking water from a fire hydrant. That's my job. I touch tons of different stacks, and it's kind of led me all over the place. And primarily sit in the front end world, but do a lot of stuff in back end as well. I just kind of get pushed to those kind of projects because of my hands-on experience with multiple front end frameworks. Yeah, that's all I got.
And finally, I think last but not least is Bree.
Hello, everyone. My name's Bree. I've been TAing 2 or 3 years, quite a long time. I'm a QA engineer for a company called Octane. I primarily focus on end-to-end automatic testing for software programs that we use for shipping. I also travel a lot, so I'm very, very rarely in St. Louis. So I am on the go a lot, but I'm always available. I am a floater, and I generally reply to Slacks the quickest. So like, I'm usually available for questions, but anytime you ask a question, make sure you give me specific questions, or I'm just going to ask a question back.
Always ask Bree where they're traveling because they have somewhere interesting. So that is your cohort of TAs. They are all, like I said, there will be 21 different options for office hours. You'll surely find someone to fit somewhere that fits in your schedule. I will post that office hour doc. TAs have till this weekend to give me their office hours. So as soon as they give me their office hours, I will post that doc for y'all. Make use of TA office hours. That is what they are here for. Make them work. They are here to help you. They want to see you succeed. That's my big, big, big admonition. Don't let them just sit there alone. As someone who's TA'd, there's nothing worse than sitting in office hours alone, contemplating your life choices. So please join office hours. Even if you think like your questions are not good, even if you think your questions are stupid, like we said, they might just ask questions back at you, but it's worth asking, right? It's worth being there. It's worth showing up. Because, you know, there are, I think, 203 of you that were accepted into this class. And I would, you know, I would love to see 203 folks virtually walk across stage at graduation. That's what your TAs want. This is not a competitive environment where we are trying to weed you out. You know, we are not, it's not only the top 10% make it. We want you all to make it, and your TAs are here to support you. So don't think that you can't ask those questions. My final thing before I'll let Carrie introduce Studio, and normally we will not be talking at you this much, like Carrie said, but that's just the nature of day one. Dave, I guarantee 1 million people are lost. Being lost is normal. That is totally normal. We have never done before, but we have heard questions about. So let me in the Zoom chat, but I will also drop it in Slack because you may want it both places. So something that we know, TAs are important. I just spent a long time telling you how important TAs are. They are important. But what really makes you successful is the people in your cohort. So the people that are here to support you as you learn together. So we're introducing something called an accountabilities buddy system, where you can sign, it's completely voluntary, where you can sign up and we will match you with a small group of people, and you can be each other's accountabilities buddies. What that looks like is up to you and your group. If it means you're going to check in with each other on Slack every 3 days, great. And if it means you form a study group, great. There's some ideas for it, but that's what it is. It is strictly for you completely voluntary, but if you think that having an accountability buddy to maybe body double with you, anything like that, just someone to be accountable to, if you think that's going to be helpful for you, sign up, fill out this survey that I'm about to drop as soon as I find it on my million tabs. And we will pair you with a small group of folks. And that is the wrong link. We'll pair you together with a small group of folks that if you want a specific identity, or if you just don't care, we'll create those pairings and we'll get back to you. Probably you have, let's say, until Tuesday of next week, and that gives us a couple days to put these groups together. Like I said, completely voluntary, but as anyone who's been through LC101 knows, it's really the people that get you through. It's the people that you study with. It's the people you work with. It's that person that you ask at 2 a.m. questions. That's what gets you through. So this is a really unique opportunity. We've never done it before. Let's see if we can make it work. Okay, Carrie, time to pass it back to introduce the studio, and then we'll transition over to studio.
Sure thing. All right. So studio, this is the time of class, and normally it will start more like 6:30 or so. But it's a short studio tonight, and we knew we needed more time for the lecture portion. So this is the time when you are going to come together and you have a wonderful opportunity to work together to solve problems. And like I said, we're going to show you some great strategies for that next week. But it's tonight, you're just basically going to be getting to know each other. Oh, hold on. There we go. We're getting to know each other. You're going to talk about your goals for the class. You're going to talk about your goals for your career, and just think in general about the things that inspire you. You know, like, why are you here? Where do you want to go? Because having this kind of stuff up front and having a growth mindset, which you'll also talk about, is really, really important. It's the only way you're going to get through it. So that's that for tonight. Your TAs will lead you in that. And somebody I saw had asked a question in the chat about bathroom breaks. And yeah, so generally speaking, this is the time when you'll have the break. It'll be after we exit this meeting, but before you go to your studio. And often we'll just kind of say, like, you know, take a 10-minute break. Some TAs will put like share their screen and put like a countdown clock on the screen, just so everybody knows, you know, how many more minutes they have or whatever, once you get into your group, your small group room. But however you guys choose to do it, that's typically how it's done. We just give you a few minutes after this before studio. Okay, so just as a reminder of what's coming down the pike, on Monday, you've got conditionals and debugging. So get that prep work done ahead of class, chapters 5 and 6. We will talk about all of that, and then you're actually going to do the studio from chapter 4. That's all the things we talked about tonight. And you'll do that together. And then class 3 next Thursday, strings and arrays, and that's when part 1 of graded assignment 1 is due. So make sure that you are spending time on both your prep work and that first part of the graded assignment leading up to that class. And then we'll have lecture and studio on strings and arrays. Okay, so with that, I'm going to close down this meeting, and we will be back here at 8 o'clock or so to do a recap and review. All right. So everybody go hang out with your groups. Have a great time getting to know each other.